May I proceed, sir? Sir, I stand here a little bit shocked, if I can say that, by Miss Priya Manichan's presentation. Is this better? Great. I stand here a little bit shocked by Miss Priya Manichan's opening statement in her presentation. Sir, I am shocked because she took the time to explain that there's a young person that was looking at the debates and they could not believe, the chaos. They're horrified. Sir, I remember being one of those horrified persons looking on at the performance of Miss Manichan in the National Assembly. Sir, it was the very member that stood in the National Assembly screaming, rape, rape, rape. Sir, why did she not know of the sensitivity of that matter back then that she come to preach to us about here today?
Honorable,
There is no, that is absolutely untrue. The honorable member knows that is absolutely untrue.
Honorable Minister, Honorable
No,
Minister,
this is a serious
Honorable
issue,
Minister.
sir.
Honorable,
Sir, I'm willing
Honorable
to
Member.
present the video to this honorable house,
And,
sir.
and I would ask the honorable member to lay it over in this house. Let's put this matter to rest.
Honorable
Let's put this
members.
matter to rest. It's an important matter. Rape is not something we play with, sir. Let's put this matter to rest.
Honorable members. There is a reason why we have standing orders. The standing order says that when the speaker is speaking, that there must be silence in the house. If there's an issue that comes to the floor, it is to be addressed in line with the standing orders that are published. I'm sure everyone has had a copy of that. Honorable Fernandes, I will say that the standing orders also dictate that every member of parliament in this house is an honorable member. And I think that the speaker also circulated, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday, on words that one may not use that are unparliamentary. Please be guided by those. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Noted. To continue, sir, to address something said by the honorable member, Ms. Manichan. The honorable member, Ms. Manichan, stood there and tried to lecture to us, to tell us what is equity. And in her explanation of equity, sir, she actually explained what is equality. There is a vast difference between equity and equality. And you cannot misconstrue those concepts, sir. They are very dense economic concepts that have heavy meaning. The honorable member actually explained equity as giving everybody textbooks. That's equality, honorable member, Minister of Education. Sir, equity would be in the distribution of textbook if you give textbooks to the poorest families first, to the poorest communities first, because they are the most vulnerable in society and they need it the most, sir. Sir, and just in case the honorable member need an avenue to test whether or not her policies are being effective, sir, equality and equity, sir, in order for you to actually measure if your policies, particularly the resources that you inject into the system, is being done in an equitable manner, you should be getting equal outcome. So unless every part of Guyana is actually given and having the equal outcome in the education sector, then the Honorable Minister of Education need not stand here and attempt to lecture us on concepts that she is yet to perfect. Sir, I will head into my presentation now. Guyana has entered a period of profound power, financial power, in the hands of central government. And because of this, rightfully so, Guyanese are demanding more today than they ever did before. Significant improvement in healthcare, higher standard of living, highest quality of education, a living wage, and dignified housing. Those things are no longer things our people hope for. These are things that they now demand, and rightfully so, Mr. Speaker. With Guyana's population of about 750,000 as of the last census, I don't know where the next one is, the government is now tabling a budget of $781.9 billion. So that amounts to 1.04 million per Guyanese and 3.72 million per Guyanese family. Mr. Speaker, the budget accounts for every Guyanese family $310,000. This is the reality that we are facing with here today in this House. It is therefore only natural for the people to expect that this budget will include provisions that would immediately end things like childhood hunger. It is natural to expect provisions that would make costs no longer a hindrance for persons achieving a higher education. It is natural to expect that in this budget, there should be provisions that provide emergency housing for the thousands of Guyanese families who suffer the indignity of living in squalors of many squatting areas and has nowhere else to go, sir. By such, sir, it is natural. Sir, as natural as these expectations may be, you can search near and far in Budget 2023 as presented by Honorable Ashley Singh, and you will not find any policy measure that is addressing those needs in 2023 budget, sir. Instead, in oil-rich Guyana, Guyanese are struggling to feed their families, giving up on their hopes of attending university and praying that the PPP don't target their homes, some built in squatting areas, for the next level of destruction, sir. Guyanese are forced to go through another year without living in dignity and living in the indignities of poverty in this country, sir, with a budget of $781.9 billion being tabled in this House for us, sir. $310,000 per family, sir. Imagine what that would have done for the families who worry where their next meal is coming from. Mr. Speaker, the PPP comes to this House and boasts about the current GDP. Sir, it is such necessary that we put the PPP's 3 years into perspective, sir. The non-oil GDP growth rate recorded over the last three years of the PPP rule is 2.6%. 2.6%, sir. Sir, and Mr. Small IQ over there trying to heckle, sir, his basic understanding of mathematics is stuck at the level of 2 1s 2, 2 into 2, 1. So, sir, you need to take a seat and listen. Now, sir, I know the Honorable Minister Singh last year said, and I'm paraphrasing here, every little child with a pocket calculator would get a different answer. And perhaps, sir, the PPP has given a glimpse into their approach of conducting mathematical analysis necessary for making major economic decisions in this country. Children with pocket calculators. That would actually explain a lot, sir. However, Mr. Speaker, I am confident that the Honorable Minister Singh that sought to make that correction, Dr. Singh, for that matter, is able to recognize that when a mathematical problem is that of an exponential nature and not simply A plus B divided by C, sir. So I am confident that he was guided wrong. Mr. Speaker, the PPP's 2.6% growth rate was achieved by emptying the Natural Resource Fund of every cent it contained at the start of 2022. Furthermore, sir, in spite of the last 3 years being the only period of oil production in Guyana's history, in spite of the PPP's borrowings, in 3 years, sir, more money than the combined total of the oil revenues Guyana received in the same period, the PPP's average yearly growth rate still falls short of the GDP that the APNU AFC achieved, sir. In the first 3 years, that is, of the APNU AFC being in office. Mr. Speaker, the PPP spent $314 billion more in 2022 than the APNU AFC spent in 2019. This represents, sir, an increase of 104.5% in government spending, and yet, sir, they delivered only 2.6 GDP rate over the last 3 years, sir. Mr. Speaker, the extent of the PPP's failure is even more profound when you consider the fact that the PPP increased government spending over 23% of non-oil GDP, sir. Now, the Lord members listening here today, I don't want to see on the opposite side, sir, anyone would understand that if you increase government spending by more than 23% more than the non-oil GDP, and you are receiving less, a lower GDP, sir, than that 23%, it simply means that other aspects, other sections of the economy is actually declining. But, sir, guess what? Now we are to ask what sections are declining, sir? What part of the economy shrank? Was it the investment? Was it consumption? We are left to wonder whether Guyanese are starting fewer businesses or eating less food, sir. This is what the information presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance shows. Thankfully, sir, we have international organizations to help us answer all of those questions. Sir, I refer to polls published by the IRI, the International Republican Institute, that shows 22% of Guyanese struggling to feed themselves and their families. 57% of Guyanese don't have money for anything but survival, sir. These are the facts we're looking at. This is the PPP's governance. And, sir, as damning as the actual data is, if you come to the actual budget that was presented in this House, the Honorable Minister of Finance actually stated that the non-oil GDP growth for 2022 was 11.5%. Sir, but then he lowered his voice a little bit when he came to the targets for 2023, sir, because in the projection that he's putting forward for the growth of the non-oil GDP, he is now saying that unlike the 11.5% that happened in 2022, in 2023, he is projecting 7.9%, sir. The Honorable Minister of Finance came to this House and presenting a budget of $781.9 billion, and yet he is telling us that the non-oil economy will be growing at a slower rate than it did last year. Brace yourself, people. That's what he's saying effectively. Sir, the PPP, my God. Already struggling Guyanese were then faced with skyrocketing inflation. They don't want us to talk about this. Inflation that affected the poorest and most vulnerable members of society the most. Because while general inflation totaled a whopping 13.7% in the PPP's 3 years, food prices have been seeing the worst when it comes to price hikes, sir. Food inflated 30% under the PPP's regime, according to the Bureau of Statistics, sir. Sir, that means if you have a family that actually budget, if your family was large enough that you actually had to budget $100,000 for food per month, now you have to budget $130,000 more for food per month. Where does these poor families, the most vulnerable in society, get this additional $30,000 to feed themselves? We're talking about the food prices here, sir. Under these conditions, it should be no surprise that the 22% of Guyanese find it difficult to feed themselves and their families, sir. Now we see more evidence in this budget that the PPP intends to continue their policy of monetary expansion with a callous lack of concern for the suffering it is causing and the countless children who are going hungry with their inflationary policy measures, sir. With no changes in the monetary expansion policy and with a clear stated intention to drastically increase the money supply and the domestic market by importing massive amounts of money and currency held at the Natural Resource Fund, by continuing their borrowing spree that we're talking about also, by lowering the interest rate and by the reduced reserve requirement at the commercial bank, among other measures, sir, the PPP still comes to this honorable house with a projection of 3.8% inflation for 2023, sir. Less than the 4.1% that the Honorable Minister Ashley Singh stood in this house last year and projected. For persons who can't remember, he stood in this house last year and he said that the target for 2022's inflation rate would be 4.1%. He was forced to come back here, sir, and to say that the actual inflation was 7.2%. But, sir, even with less data than he has, I predicted, whilst he predicted 4.1, I predicted 8%, sir, with less data than he had. Sir, expansionist monetary policies are inflationary by nature. That is such a difficulty, apparently, for the PPP to understand. Mr. Speaker, the PPP wants to hope that inflation will reduce in spite of them taking no action to achieve projected reduction. Instead, they blame the international market for the inflation caused by the monetary policy that they have in place. When at the same time, sir, they themselves are saying, and Honorable Minister Singh would have said in his presentation also, that the inflation is caused by the food price increase. Locally grown foods are what we are facing the hiking prices with. So when the Honorable Minister Kwame McCoy came to this house yesterday and brought the sugar and the oil that he took out of the hampers that they take and give to people and say that he got it from Mocha, he can't bring that nonsense to us because the people on the ground are facing the hardship and the difficulties, sir. Sir, the Honorable Minister Ashley Singh stood and presented a budget that stated that the external debt was at 1.6 billion US dollars and the internal debt 2.1 billion US dollars, totaling 3.7 billion US dollars, sir. Given the increased debt per household for 2023 is in excess, sir, of $530,000, sir. This is a reality that Guyanese are facing today. With a budget, sir, of $781.9 billion, the debt burden that is being added to Guyanese shoulders is actually over $500,000 per household. These are the realities that the PPP is bringing to us. Sir, to further elaborate on the domestic debt, the Honorable Ashley Singh went on to say, sir, and I quote, "The growth of domestic debt service payments was in turn largely due to the commencement of principal repayments on debentures issued in 2021 to securitize an inherited overdraft at the central bank." Mr. Speaker, this information is false information deliberately spread to deceive people. That, Mr. Speaker, is disinformation. Mr. Speaker, it was the very Ashley Singh, honorable member, that stood in this house and said that as of August the 2nd, 2020, when the PPP took office, the overdraft was $78.7 billion, sir. And after 4 months of the PPP being in office in 2020, at the end of 2020, the overdraft was $100.6 billion, sir. $37.9 billion in a few months, and they come to talk to us. But that wasn't all, sir. Because just 6 months after that, in June of 2021, the government sold over $200 billion in debentures to clear off the overdraft. They racked up, sir, in less than 1 year. They racked up more than
double the overdraft that they inherited from the APN UAFC administration on the 2nd of August 2020. So how dare they come to this house and speak about inherited overdraft? That, sir, is disinformation, and we will not stand for it. Mr. Speaker, the opening speaker on the government side, Joe Hamilton, honorable member, though he's not in the house right now, spoke of opposing and proposing as an opposition, completely neglected or pretending not to hear the numerous recommendations that continues to be pushed forward by members of the opposition. But sir, let's turn our attention to wages and salaries. Sir, it was in 2016, when the honorable members of the government side, senior members of the PPP administration, stood in the National Assembly and demanded that wages and salaries be increased by 50%. That was them in opposition, sir. That was them proposing as an opposition. That is how they understood it. Sir, back in 2016, the budget was $230 billion. They said public servants should get 50% salary increases. Today, with a budget of $781.9 billion, PPP have absolutely no plan on increasing wages and salaries, not even by 15%, sir. There's absolutely no allocation that is going to provide for that. They talk about line item 6141. There is no allocation that is going to significantly increase wages and salaries for public servants in this country. They suddenly get amnesia when it comes to what you should propose as an opposition, sir. That insult to injury, sir. This one I take personal offense to. The public service minister, oh, she's not in the house right now. I'll speak nevertheless, sir. The public service minister stood in this house yesterday and boldly said that although Ashni Singh, honorable member, spoke in 2022 budget presentations about revising the public service salary scale, it was not until the end of the year that they actually began the process. This is the priority that they actually put on the public servants when it comes to wages and salaries, sir. Mr. Speaker, the PPP has no excuse for not significantly raising wages and salaries for public servants. And sir, I will call them out for having the audacity to tell public servants in this country, because they have been doing this, that the reason why they're not increasing their wages and salaries, sir, is because if you increase more wages and salaries, you're going to put more money out into the economy and it's going to cause inflation, sir. How dare them stand before the people of this country and say that they're going to inject $781.9 billion into the economy. Oh, but if you give poor people money, a little bit more, you can cause inflation. So giving rich people money don't cause inflation too, sir? That's what they want to tell the people of this country? What economic policy are they looking at, sir? In 2016, with a budget of $230 billion, the APN UAFC government gave 10% to the lowest earners in our country, sir. In 2022, with a budget of $552.9 billion, the PPP came and gave the people 8%, sir. And now, sir, in 2023, with a budget of $781.9 billion, we are yet to hear of salary increases for wages and salaries in this country for public servants. They have absolutely no interest in those pledges they made, because it was political gimmicks, and the people of this country is going to stand up and they're going to understand the same way they. To date, they have no plan on doing it. They know the truth, but they continue to come here and be word about this budget. I have to speak about unemployment. Mr. Speaker, the PPP and their most recent attempt to address unemployment, I think, is one of the most sickening attempts that I have heard thus far. Mr. Speaker, senior members of the government saying, and I quote, today, Guyana today rather, if you don't have a job, it's because you don't want one. And to add insult to injury, sir, they are, and if you need proof, sir, I'm willing to take the video evidence and present it to this house. And to add insult to injury, sir, they are now saying that if you don't have a job, it's because you're lazy. I have heard them say this, and sir, those statements are not only disrespectful to the Guyanese people, sir, those statements are blatant bypass, as we would say out on the street, to the thousands of university graduates that's still in search of a job. And Mr. Speaker, I think that it would appear that senior members of government do not understand the concept of unemployment and how it's computed. Sir, because if they did know that, they would know that in order for you to be counted as unemployed, you would have to be actively looking for a job and being unable to find one. So to go out there and to say that persons that are unemployed are lazy or they don't want a job, disrespectful to the highest, sir, and I will not stand for it in this house, sir. Sir, according to the data produced by the Bureau of Statistics, youth unemployment was at 31.9%. Sir, and the overall unemployment was at 14.5%, sir. So, and I have to say at this point that this data is actually coming from the third quarter report of the Labor Force Survey of 2021. And I will call the PPP out also on holding back data, hiding information from this country, sir. We are yet to receive the fourth quarter report for the labor survey in this country, and we had absolutely no report being published in the entire year of 2022 because they do not want those facts being addressed by the public, sir, because when those reports are published, we go through it page for page, line for line, sir, and they need to do better than that. Mr. Speaker, those numbers simply say that over 42,000 persons were unemployed as of the third quarter of 2021. 20,000. How dare the PPP come if you don't have a, and how you are qualified. Y'all forget tech or whatever you did. Forget the work available. With unemployment that they are. PPP's idea of unemployment is to provide a job. That's their brilliant idea. Full mismanagement in this. Already are employed and now unemployed persons are once again breadline. Unemployment in Guyana is real. University graduates are looking for jobs and find. Graduates from technical institutes are looking for programs are currently looking. This, sir, a lot of them went through programs that he presides over as a sir. And what are we to say of the brilliant policy measures that are in place by this unemployment reality? Sir, nothing in this budget. Mr. Speaker, without addressing the matter of poverty, and so address a statement made. I remember that Indar yesterday. Sir, Mr. Indar stood in this house and of the APN criticized the APN spending too much capital. What current expense, where salary, it includes things like public assistance. Every bit of people-centered policy comes under current capital, and we will not apologize for spending money on the people of this country. So, and so, it was a campaign level, the length and people, sir. Eat road. And that, oh, they on capital expenditure. Or they have to pick a struggle. Missing attention to this point. Today, we stand here with a budget of 7, and the more put forward for the vulnerable, rein in the natural house is a 5,000 increase. It's 3,000 increase under this administration.
Honorable member, you would need a 5 minutes extension.
Move that the
Thank you, honorable member. A minute. Assembly.
Thank you, sir. And sir, Mr. Speaker, President with responsibility for finance stood in the House. Low-income mortgage to 20 million. Housing is particularly or policy need to address in a strict and realistic may sound attractive to low-income earners. After all, that's what it is. Low-income earners, low-income mortgage. Sir, we need to deal with the reality of the proposal. It is only fair that we are honest to the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, a 20 million mortgage taken at a commercial bank for the period of 10 years with an interest rate of 5.95, we're using the Republic Bank rate here, sir, will require monthly payments of $142,000 per month. And sir, if you are to apply the 30% principle, sir, that $142,000 will need to cover 30% of someone's income. Someone would need to be making 30% mortgage, sir. This is the reality of what you're speaking about. Mr. Speaker, the low-income mortgage ceiling of $20 million is not for low-income earners. And the PPP knows this. That is why when you look at the size of the low-income turnkey houses that they're building, it will not reflect the quality of a $20 million home, sir. These are the realities that we are looking at today. And I have to say, low-income earners today are still left to see
where actually they're going to be getting the policy measures that is going to aid them in constructing their homes, sir. For 3 years now, sir, we have come to this house and tried our best to get the fact through to our colleagues on the other side. The PPP's government to governance lacks humanity, and this is something that was very visible only a short while ago in Mokasor. The budget treats Guyana economy as though it is a small collection of large businesses, and we cannot continue like that, sir. In the words of the Indian economist, Amartya Sen, sir, he says, economic growth without investment in human development is unsustainable. It's unethical. It is unsustainable, sir, and it is unethical. It's unsustainable because of the simple fact that an economy is made up of collective efforts and accomplishments of people, hardworking Guyanese, and not a few large businesses, sir. It is the wealth of the people in the economy, not the wealth of the economy that they are in, sir. That must be the primary concern of any reasonable and responsible government. What's their current level of education? What's their health care? What's their diet like? And are Guyanese afforded the opportunity to turn their dreams into reality, sir? These are the questions that would be on the front burner of any responsible governance, sir. In closing, sir, Guyana under the PPP is a place where 57% of our population doesn't have money for anything but survival. Guyana under the PPP is a place where 22% of Guyanese find it difficult to feed themselves and families. Guyana under the PPP is a place where higher education is still out of the reach of the poorest families. All this while the PPP continues to boast of having the fastest growing economy in the world. As predictable as the PPP's failure may have been, sir, it is still profoundly depressing that we will enter our 4th year as an oil-producing nation with no real improvement in the lives and the standard of living of the majority of Guyanese family, who will continue to suffer the indignities of poverty in this country, sir. Sir, we can do much better as a people, and I will urge the PPP administration to go back and take a look at the budget that they're presenting to us and take a page out of the book of APNU AFC and actually spend more on current expenditure and the most vulnerable in society. Sir, this is the only way that we should be able to boast about being the fastest growing economy in the world. I thank you.